Hey guys, what's up? It's iPenguinPat, the destroyer of dreams, here again with another Blue Galaxy video. Now, a small few of you, I'll say about 1,000, saw my previous Blue Galaxy video where I said that Blue Galaxy was for suckers and that if somebody proved me wrong, I would give them credit, especially with regard to my calculations and whatnot. And I will say, I'm totally open to eating a big slice of humble pie. Ayzo Rex, along with several others, pointed out one major flaw in my approach to the calculations. I used the same method for calculating the ROI for the Blue Galaxy as I did for the Cape, and that's not really valid because Blue Galaxy doesn't go up an equal amount each level. If you rush to some of the high return levels, you can actually pay back much quicker. And in fact, I would go as far as to say it actually makes more sense to just power level the hell out of your Blue Galaxy to 55 or 56, or if you're going all the way up to 67, getting up to those high efficiency ranges, because in the lower ranges, it's just not efficient. So let me get down to the numbers and whatnot, and we will talk it over. So here is my updated spreadsheet. And in this case, what I did that's a little bit different than last time is last time I was looking at a per level ROI, but that's not really what we should be looking at. What we should be looking at is how long it takes to pay for itself on a cumulative cost basis. Meaning that what is the cumulative cost to get all the way up to this level? So if we're going to level 9, how much does it cost cumulatively across all of the levels? And then from there, figure out how long it would take to have a ROI, or how long it takes to break even. Now, again, this is different on Blue Galaxy versus buildings with a more static increase in forge points, like your Cape or your Innovation Tower or CDM or things like that, where it's a more static on a per level basis. Okay, so here's some of the big thing that is super important, and I think that setting up the spreadsheet like this makes it a lot easier to visualize and see what's going on. And whether or not Blue Galaxy is even worth semi-considering is highly dependent on what buildings you have in your city, period. So what I did was I set up these tables to show if you have a 5 forge point average, a 6, 7, 8, all the way up to 14. Now, I can't even actually think of any way that you could have a 14 forge point average for 13 or 14 charges of Blue Galaxy. But this is just for the sake of keeping in mind that we know that Inno is going to continue to put out new buildings, and power creep is going to crank some of these things up. And when you've got things like the train and the hippodromes and inevitably some of these other buildings that are going to come out, eventually I'm sure there are going to be people who are hitting a 14 average for their collections. And what you can see here is that as we come down into what would be the peak area, because really you've got two like peak or three peak levels. You've got the 54 and 55, and then you've got going to 67 and 68. And those are really the main 4 levels of peak efficiency. And based on that, I would say that really, generally speaking, you really should be looking at having about a 9 forge point average for all of your charges. So at level 54 and 55, that is, how many charges is that? I believe it's 13 charges. So you need your top 13 buildings to average at least 9 forge points, or it's not like I don't even know that we really even get into the discussion. Anything less than that, and I don't even know it's worth having a discussion about, because you're not even paying for it within the first year of having this building. And if your whole point of getting this building is to speed up how quickly you progress, and it's taking you longer than a year to pay for itself, then that's slowing you down. You would be faster to just focus on other buildings. Now, if you are at a place in your game where you literally have nowhere left to spend, then that's a different story. So let's look at a couple other things, and I'll circle back on this. Now, one thing that will be important is actually figuring out what your top buildings are going to be for your collections. And if you are on desktop, I highly recommend checking out FOE Helper. It's an extension. It's this bar over here that everybody keeps asking about. It's an extension that gives you a bunch of tools. And people ask, is it legal? Yes, the developers of this extension have actually spoken with the community managers at Inno, and Inno has specifically said you need to change these things in order for it to be compliant with our requirements. So you can comfortably know that if you're using FOE Helper, that Inno has already vetted this tool. Now there's other tools out there that have not been vetted, and I've heard of people getting banned for using them because they automate functions that they're not allowed to automate. And I would say I would avoid those completely. But FOE Helper has some really cool things, and in this case, we're looking at the production overview. And what I did here is I did a sort by the quantity of the production, and now I can come here and I can see that my top producers are going to be that are buildings, not just great buildings, are going to be like my World's Fair, my airship, my treasury, and so on down the list. So you can take these and figure out what your average collection is based on the number of buildings. And I would again say you really should be looking at your top 13 or 14 buildings, because it doesn't really make sense to level this building if you're not going to take it all the way up through the sweet spot up into the maximum efficiency range. Okay, so let's see here. So in my case, I think mine ended up being like, I don't remember. I want to say it was like 7 or 8 or something. It was not very high. It might have even been 6 because I just don't care about forge points. And I set up this spreadsheet to update dynamically, so you can make a copy of this spreadsheet and you can put your own numbers in. And so here, as soon as I update and I say that it's 9, these 3 columns right here will update to reflect the numbers that you put here. And the other number that's really important to keep in mind is the opportunity cost. And this is one of the reasons why I think it's so important that if you're going to level this building, you take it all the way up to the max efficiency levels, is because when you start dealing with the opportunity cost, you are really you're really making it so that some of these levels really aren't very practical for you. So for example, at level 1, there is no way that you will ever break even, because your effective forge points per day is -1. You are actually losing forge points per day by building this building. Even if you have 20 as your oh wait, no, at 20 it works out. So anywho, let's see if 15. We're just playing around here. I don't know. All right, well, let's go back to 8, because 8's a pretty reasonable goal for a newer player. So the amount of forge points that per day that you're getting up through these lower levels is only giving you a small improvement in your forge point per square that you're getting. And that's really the big thing that you're working on when you're looking at a building that's a forge point producing building, great building in particular, is you're trying to maximize the forge points per square that you are squeezing out of your city. And when you jump over to your forge point building efficiencies here, you can see that there's some really efficient buildings that are becoming available here. The hippodrome and the train, wherever the train is, those, even though they're only showing here at the 0.5, realistically, a lot of players are going to be attaching tracks that are going to be adding more forge points. They're going to be attaching train cars. They're going to be adding more forge points. So the forge point per tile is going to crank up and keep going up and up. So you really don't even want to have a blue galaxy put into your city unless it's going to be significantly increasing your forge point per tile, because otherwise it doesn't make sense. Like, why would you spend a bunch of forge points that take a year to pay back or 2 years to pay back and not have actually gained anything from an opportunity cost basis? So we're going back to the chart. Now, 6 is kind of a default opportunity cost, because that is how many shrines of knowledge. It's actually a mix of shrines of knowledge and sacred skywatch that you can fit in the 35 squares of your blue galaxy. But realistically, there are going to be players that are going to have to take out other buildings besides these less efficient buildings in order to put this in. And if you are having to take out, like, let's say a level 2 terrace farm, actually no, you wouldn't take that out because that's pretty good, but I don't know. Let's see here. What's a good example of something that you might take out? Like, you might take out a cottage, or I don't know. I don't know what you would take out. Somebody leave a comment below and tell me what you would take out if you were going to be doing this, because I don't even know. I wouldn't, because I wouldn't build it, so I don't know what you'd build. Dark doorways. Like, say you're taking out dark doorways, right? You've got in the amount of space that you could build dark doorways, which dark doorways are pretty easy to get in the antique dealer now. Like, it would be, if you were hunting dark doorways, you could load up, you could get 5 or 6 of these, no problem. So dark doorways are 9 squares. So in 36, that gives you about 4 dark doorways, which is about 12 forge points, roughly. We'll just call it 10, just for the sake of calculating, right? So if you're giving up 10 dark doorways to put in a blue galaxy, and your average, just say your average forge point building was 10, right? At that point, you're still barely breaking even at a year. And if you weren't even that high, say you were only at 8, it's going to take you well over a year to even break even. Does that make sense? So that's why I say this building is a very niche building. This building is only for players who have essentially run out of places to put their forge points. And that's kind of a spot that I'm sort of reaching myself. Like, when I look at my list of great buildings, and it's like, okay, well, what do I level next? Because everything takes so long to level, and the amount of incremental benefit that I get from leveling each of these things is essentially pretty minimal. I mean, at this point, it's more just for ego than it is for anything else. All right, so point where I'm going with all of this is basically to say, we're going to put a blue galaxy in. You got to be specific. All right, so the other thing, and I'm going to step over here to this another post, because I had some really great posts, and this person showed me that there are a lot more people who have this high forge point per day average for their collection, much more than I was expecting, right? This person's top 14 collections are pretty solid. So I live in a world of fighters, right? Like, we're all focused on attack per square and racks and things like that. So I was not expecting to see so many people who had tuned their cities so much towards having the forge point generation. So as you can see here, it's actually not that crazy to have this type of thing if that's the focus of your game. Now, I'm going to make a whole nother video that explains why I still don't think this is the most efficient way to play the game. But if you are looking to max out your forge points per square, then there's certainly a place for this. Now, the last thing that I want to bring up is, does Blue Galaxy double your units? And I can put a poll up. And this is kind of a funny question to ask, because the actual wording on Blue Galaxy, the thing is that this right here says excludes military buildings, right? So the wiki doesn't actually give you a very good explanation, because military building, what does that mean, right? Like, does that mean literally you come in here, like, these are military buildings to me? I don't think of, like, when I'm talking about military buildings, I'm not thinking about what like the villa, right? The governor's villa is not a military building to me. Now, when you look at the specific wording in the description, it's a little bit different. The specific wording says, if you look there, it says excludes unit collections. Okay, so that's actually kind of a strange wording as well, because then you can say, okay, well, does that mean that any building that gives units, it's not going to double that whole building's collection, or does it only exclude the unit part of that building? The wording is just a little bit muddy, and that's why I posted the question. I realize that the description says one thing, but you have to keep in mind that there's different interpretations. And believe me, if you are married, you know there are different interpretations to the same exact wording, right? Somebody says, oh yeah, you can't have enough of that. Does that mean that you, like, if you have too much, like, you can have too much because it's bad? Or are you saying that you can never have too much, right? The same wording, and it could mean two different things, and then mean opposite things on top of it all. So anyhow, looking at this poll, I love you guys for so many of you answering this. Over 200 people answered. And of the 200 people, we can see that we actually had a couple people who are having their units doubled, which I think is really awesome. And I would love some screenshots of you getting your units doubled, because that's spectacular. I mean, you are a ninja compared to the rest of us. I was pleasantly surprised to see that such a small number of people had Blue Galaxy, because I know that of the people who are watching this channel, most people are not ready for that step of the game. Now, I did have the help of a player. His name was Francisco, and I believe that's his name. Oh my gosh, I'm gonna have to go look it up. I'll put it in the description and give him full credit. But and he plays on a server that is a Spanish server, so you'll have to bear with the English not being the language if you're an English speaker, and if this is actually your first language, this is easy for you to read. And you can see here, if you look at his unit count and then you look at the next one, it only goes up by 3. Oh, and you know what? I didn't take a picture of the double. Well, this I watched a video, and he posted a video for me to see, and it only went up 3. So I can tell you unequivocally from watching a video that it does not double the actual units. Even though the rest of the collection is doubled, the units themselves do not get doubled with Blue Galaxy. So to end any sort of controversy, discussion, or whatever about it. Okay. So I think that as far as the Blue Galaxy goes, that really covers most of it. I just want to emphasize how important it is that if you're going to put this building in, that you consider the opportunity cost of what you're putting in, because 35 squares is a lot of squares to give up, especially if it's going to take you a year or more to pay off. And if you are a newer player and you are just getting started, oh yeah, that's the other thing. So the forge point per square, that's the other big thing, and that's really where the last thing to consider comes in. And the reason why this is important is because you're competing with the other things that you can have in your city, and that's kind of where that opportunity cost comes in. So if you're only getting up to these efficiencies of what you can get from a regular building by coming up to level 30, it's really kind of a silly thing. Like, it doesn't make sense for you to spend all this time to level a building. Even if it is giving you more forge points, it's not actually necessarily more efficient than what you could put in that space in general. And that's one of the reasons why Cape, even though it's not one of my favorite buildings, it's definitely the best forge point building itself, because the efficiency goes up to 3 forge points per square at the most efficient range, which is at level like 59 to 60. And reasonably, you can take it up to 80, and at 80, you're looking at 4 forge points per square. That's super efficient, and that's more efficient than Blue Galaxy ever gets, excluding goods and all that. So, again, that's why I kind of still lean, and I still feel pretty good about my statement that Blue Galaxy is for suckers. I know you guys are going to be mad, because the numbers are definitely better now with the calculations corrected and a more taking into consideration all of the factors and the variables. I still think that until you hit that end game where you are just, all your buildings are at level 100 and you just have nothing better to spend your forge points on, and you're just blowing forge points because you're bored out of your gourd, okay, fine. Otherwise, you're a sucker. Like, if you're a new player and you're early in your game, you don't have a lot of big event buildings, this is not for you. Stay away. You're wasting your forge points, you're wasting your goods, you're wasting your resources, and you're slowing your progress down. All right, if this video was helpful at all, please like and subscribe. And if it wasn't, leave a comment below and tell me why I'm wrong again. All right, guys, catch you later.